I'm going to introduce Andy. He's been part of the symposium for many, many years. It's the big 33 years this year, very significant number, especially for some. And he is a very, very prolific lecturer. I think that he's probably spoken to more people about, what's happening, the truth behind all the media and everything. And he manages to get across to normal groups, which is just amazing. He gives about sort of 3 or 4 lectures a week, which is, I think, incredible, the amount of thousands and thousands of people he must have spoken to. And the theme of his talk today, interestingly enough, I think carries on quite nicely from Wendy's, she's an astrologer that spoke yesterday's talk, on what we're going into, this new world we're going into. I personally think it's all part of the transition from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And when there is a big transition like that, there is always a kind of collective anxiety. So, you can feel it, can't you? This new world that's being birthed. And, more people that can sort of give us some roadmaps as to what the future might hold. So in terms of Andy's talk, he's going to really bring these themes to life. And as you know, he also is not downbeat. He's much more kind of, optimistic, if you like. So if you could give a big round of applause for Andy.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, thank you very much for coming in so early, and lovely to see you all. And we're going to talk today about something that I know everybody is talking about it, but I don't think we're talking about it enough. And towards the end of last year, I decided that for this year's symposium, presentation, that I would address AI. And that was before suddenly it really burst into the news. And the last few months, it's like everybody's talking about AI, but they should be. And then I thought, actually, that makes the need to talk about it even stronger. As one of the things that I have found is that, especially in our world, and when I say our, I mean, those that question orthodoxy, I do find there's a little bit of naivety, though, about AI and what that's going to bring for all of us. And we especially that do think outside of the box, we need to find a way to navigate our way through this. So what I'm going to do today is look at where are we going with this, and ultimately, what is it we cannot stop, and what is it that we can do with what we cannot stop that will perhaps leave us still being free. Because a lot of claims at the moment about the freedom that AI will bring, but freedom for who, and what kind of freedom? But before we come to that, I'm just going to begin with a prelude. So let me show you a rather horrible picture of me, but I want to introduce you mainly to this handsome gentleman on my right there. That is my stepson, Will, Helen's son. And he has been very helpful with this presentation today. So he's going to come into the story a bit later on. But this is when we had a little trip a few months ago to the Houses of Parliament. How many people here have ever been to the House, inside the House of Parliament? So quite a few of you. If you haven't, I really, really recommend it. Whatever you think about the people inside this building, right? If you want to get an insight into power, if you call it the full power, and of course many don't, but nonetheless, this is a place you really need to understand. So when you go in, the first thing you see is Westminster Hall. I mean, it is such a historical place. I found it almost moving to be there. So many incredible things have happened there, right? The trial of King Charles I in the English Civil Wars, for instance. That was a huge moment in our history. Look it up if you're not aware of that. And of course, then when the Queen died, this is where she laid in state and everybody was walking around the coffin. So it's just to be there at the centre of all this, it feels very important. And then you walk around and you eventually get led into the chambers. To stand in the House of Commons is really an extraordinary experience where all these decisions get made. Now, so let's address this now. Some will say, yes, but they're not making the real decisions. That's the New World Order doing that. So I say what I always say to that is, yes, there's a truth to that, but many people who are in the New World Order begin in places like this. From Tony Blair to Peter Mandelson to Ed Balls to Michael Gove, it begins here, wherever they go. And therefore what happens in places like this does matter. I don't agree with those that say it doesn't. It does matter. But to be in there and see the scratchy old green leather and realise how tatty it is in there is really quite interesting. But what you begin to realise as you walk around it is that there are certain things that no longer make any sense. So you then get sort of ushered into the lobby rooms, or where you vote. So when you're going to vote, aye or nay, you get all shuffled into this kind of rather thin corridor. And it's clearly no longer fit for purpose. If there's a really big vote, you can have hundreds of MPs all cramming into these little spaces to cast their vote. Now, they've tried to modernise a little bit in recent years. And you can now electronically vote. There we are. But hang on a minute. There's only one electronic voting machine. So instead of having sort of 3 or 4, because look, either electronic voting works for them or it doesn't, so why not have 3 or 4? No, there's one. So hundreds of people have got to cram, waiting to tap their whatever on this machine. And you think, why not have more? And then you begin to realise that they're kind of very stuck in their ways there. And this is extremely symbolic. And one of the most fascinating things is when you have to vote, right, many of you will know this, but not all of you will, when they ring the division bell, which indicates it's time to vote. Wherever you are in the House of Commons, and it's a huge building, that does not do justice to the scale of how big it is, right? Wherever you are, you've got 8 minutes to get to the voting lobbies. So even if you're at one end of the hall, right, you've got to run in 8 minutes, drop everything you're doing to go and cast your vote. And if you get there late, you won't be able to cast your vote. So while we were having this guided tour, there's our guide, I said, why don't they just sort of make it, 12 minutes or 15 minutes so they don't have to run? And she said, well, because it's tradition. Yes, but is it a tradition that's fit for purpose? And the answer was, well, it's tradition. So if anybody can explain why that's a good tradition, right, I'd love to know. And that's an indication of just how stuck in their ways they are, and that's symbolic of something much wider. And there's something also very symbolic going on. The Houses of Parliament are falling down. So some of you might have seen this. They need drastic repair. And I won't list all this, but you can see there some of the things. It's rat-infested, bits of masonry are falling off. Do you want a symbol for the state of the nation? Right? That's one. And here's an even greater symbol. They don't want to leave. They've all been told, if you want this place gutted out seriously and repaired, you all need to get out. And they're all going, oh, well, we don't really want to. And they're saying they're going to try to stay in there, which means that apparently, well, one estimation was the renovations could take 86 years. But they're still preferring to do that than get out. And people have said, why don't you just get out and create a new modern chamber? Here's the Scottish Parliament building. They've got their own problems, right? But nonetheless, you could argue that's a much better way of doing things instead of this confrontational benches facing each other, which, by the way, if you don't know, right, in the House of Commons and the Lords, right, are precisely 2 swords' length and a bit. That's what's at the core of our democracy, so that if a fight broke out in the early days, they couldn't get to each other. That's at the root of our democracy. But this is better, so a semicircle, or sort of in the round. You're going to get much better decisions that way, but they don't want to do it. And if you think about it, one of the reasons is they know the minute they move to a modern building, even temporarily, all these old traditions are going to begin to look really silly And you know, Black Rod, where they slam the door on Black Rod and he has to, or she has to bang on the door to get the door. I love these things on one level because they're so stupid and Monty Python. But on the other level, do we really need to keep doing that? And they know none of that would make any sense if they go to a new place. So they're resisting. Now that is so symbolic, though. The resisting movement forward, new ways of doing things. And as a result, you know, there's a lot of things in this country, and other countries too, I know, that are really beginning to show wear and tear in every way. But one thing that had never struck me before is when you go to what they call the Palace of Westminster, boy, it really is a palace. I didn't realise how opulent it was. And even as I was walking around these chambers and looking up at all this incredible artistry and wonderful paintings, I was beginning to go into this kind of weird miasma where I was forgetting that the outside world even existed. Literally, you feel so cut off from normal life. And I thought, if I worked here every day, I think I'd get sucked into this. Oh, we're very grand here, aren't we? Well, I like it here. And you've got all the bars and all the nice restaurants there that you can only use if you're an MP and so on. And it really hit me in that moment. That's why there's still such a class division, where we're kind of looked at as peasants, not by all of them. I think there are some good MPs, don't get me wrong. I think there are some trying to make differences. But, you know, in the end, this feeling of them and us, it gets reinforced. And there's so much evidence that we're still in this serfs and peasants world and the nobility over there. It might not be declared as that, but that's basically what it is. And we're seeing more and more evidence that this is actually getting worse and not getting better. I just want to remind you about this. A year ago, in Liz We Trust, Liz Truss was going to be the solution to all our problems here. Well, there was actually a headline that we should have heeded a little bit better than that, which was that one. Oh my God. And we talked about this a year ago. She was clearly never fit for power. She should never have ever been allowed anywhere near power. The suggestions she was making for the economy, right, have had real world implications for people that now can't get mortgages anymore. You know, they're finding everything's running away from them. And she's still saying she did nothing wrong and saying, well, if everybody had gone along with me, it would have worked. But she was told it wouldn't work and she still pushed ahead with it anyway. These are the people we are electing to high office, and they will eventually become New World Order. Right? Remember this. So these are the minds we are allowing to creep their way up to the top. And I think we should seriously look at how we're doing it. Drive around and look at the roads. You want another symbol? And I know it's not, I mean, I remember driving near San Francisco and being appalled at the roads there, but it's now so bad. I mean, this is typical of roads even around where we live, and we're not in a horrible place. The infrastructure is crumbling away. They haven't got the time or the money. I'm not going to take questions if that's right, but later maybe. The time and the money, right? They haven't got it, or there isn't the willpower to solve it. The NHS is crumbling away. It's no longer fit for purpose. It cannot go on in the way that it is, because we're all trying to pretend we're still in 1945 or whatever. We're not. There is different needs. There are more people. You know. So there's so many things that no longer function about the nation. And if we don't address this soon, we're going to really feel it badly. But that doesn't mean there isn't any money. I mean, many of you will be aware of just how much money the energy companies are raking in, right? Serfs and peasants, that's how they're seeing us. They're making huge profits. But even after, right, world energy prices fall, they don't hand that all back to us, do they? And some people are paying the most ridiculous amount of money, including us, I might add, per month, just to have the heating on. Whereas, meanwhile, you realise just how much money they're making, and I think we need the return of Dr. Evil at this point. They are laughing at us. They must be. They are laughing at us completely. Why are people not, right, at the doors of the energy companies every day, protesting, lobbying? Instead, they're gluing themselves to rows over insulation. Why are these people not being held to account? They are literally taking the piss. Meanwhile, water companies are giving us shit. Do excuse me. So if you don't live here, I know this all seems parochial, but it's another symbol of where we're at, and other countries are falling into this. So the water companies are making enormous profits, enormous, and they are pumping all the sewage into rivers and watercourses. Why? Because they will not invest in the infrastructure that they need, so they don't need to do that. And they say, oh, well, we have to do this sometimes. They don't have to do it if they invest in a proper water system. It's because they want to keep their shareholders happy. They want to keep the bosses at the top happy, getting stupid amounts of money and bonuses that they do not deserve. And that is another symbol of where we're at. But here's the other thing. Have you noticed now how often you hear this phrase, yeah? Culture wars. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about all the energy bosses making all the money. What we need to worry about are the culture wars. Now, I don't know who invented that phrase, but it's really crept up, hasn't it? And especially if you ever listen to Radio 4, every other thing, they're talking about culture wars. And when you try to work out what that means, so it's supposed to represent like battles between those of one mindset and those of another mindset. Now, supposedly that works with kind of all kinds of different ways of thinking. But what you then realize is what they really mean is they don't like people questioning orthodoxy. And if you do listen to Radio 4, you might well have come across this lady at some point. Mariana Spring. Bless you, Mariana. I'm sure you're a very good journalist, but... So she's been doing this series about conspiracy land. And she's not wrong about everything she says. There are some critiques we can make of the truth of the world. I've said that before. But what she's doing is just basically coming in saying, if you believe in any of this conspiracy stuff, you're wrong. She's come from that school of journalism, and there's a lot of it about, isn't there, where basically they are right. Whatever they think is right. Anybody that questions that, right, well, they're obviously mad conspiracy theorists. And there's no recognition in any of these programs, and it's not just this, rather keep running programs about conspiracy, trying to debunk it. There is no understanding that those people that believe in conspiracy might have reasons for doing so, and that there is often evidence that these programs do not address, right? Bit of a key omission, would you say? And here's the big one. They do not understand that people that do question orthodoxy are wanting a better world. They're always portrayed as bad people in some way, or very, very misguided, never understanding that what they want is a wider conversation so that we live in a world of real freedom, not this fake freedom, this artificial freedom that we keep being fed. So this is the problem. You know, the culture wars, yeah, okay. But are they addressing things like this? The fact that the World Health Organization is at the moment, as some of you will know, trying to take control of global governments so that in the next pandemic, whatever they tell us to do, governments will have to do it. We will give away our sovereignty, and if they say you must wear a mask or you must have the Jabberwocky, good phrase, you will have to do it. And it doesn't matter what your government says, doesn't matter what your House of Commons says. If they say it, it will be done globally. Now, some countries are standing against this. Be glad. Are we? Have I heard that discussed with any incisiveness on the BBC? No. They're just blindly going with it. There were some parliamentary committees to talk about this. And right, it has to be said, one of the few people that stood up was Andrew Bridgen MP. And questioned it and said, this is not a sensible thing to do. Once you do this, you will never be able to come back from it. You're giving away democracy. And everybody just looked at their feet, let him have his say, and then carried on like he'd never said it. Now listen, Bridgen, as we know, has questioned the health effects of the Jabberwocky and so on. But I must tell you, of course, in the wonderful world of trutherism, some people see the man as a shill. Don't trust him. Well, maybe, but look, did he really sacrifice his whole career, because he's been thrown out of the Tory party now, right, for some wider New World Order good? Probably not. So, let's welcome things like this when we get it. Eh? But so the point here is, why is this not being addressed? Why are we all being kind of circled into talking about culture wars when there's much bigger fish to fry? There's going to be a bit of a sci-fi theme to this talk, and sci-fi's come up this weekend already a few times. So I've long loved sci-fi, but I realised when it got to the 50th anniversary of the Dune books that I'd never actually read them. And I thought, I've got to put that right, and I'm absolutely loving them. There's loads of Dune books. So there's 6 originals and others written by Frank Herbert's son and other people. But I was really struck by a quote in one of the Dune books that just sums up exactly where we are today. Do read them, because they're all about the nature of power and control agendas and how it gets abused. That's basically what Herbert was getting at here. But I'll give you a brief quote. A large populace held in check by a small but powerful force is quite a common situation in the universe. And we know the major conditions wherein this large populace may turn upon its keepers. 1, when they find a leader. This is the most volatile threat to the powerful. They must retain control of leaders. 2, when the populace recognizes its chains, keep the populace blind and unquestioning. 3, when the populace perceives a hope of escape from bondage, they must never even believe that escape is possible. And I read that, thought, whoa, this is in action all around us every day. And, some of these were written several decades ago. So really, I recommend Dune. We'll briefly come back to Dune later on because there's some other resonance there. So look, at the moment, we're certainly faced with a lot of issues. The war in Ukraine, whatever you think's causing it and why and manipulation, it's happening, right? Wildlife's dying. The environment's being destroyed. The immigrant boat people, it's going to get worse. It will get worse and worse and worse. Interestingly, I remember Powden Jenkins on this very stage some years ago saying, yes, it needs dealing with, but before you condemn these people too quickly, one day it might be us wanting to go to them. And it did strike me when I saw the films of people fleeing the Greek fires, all the English tourists on the boats being taken out. I thought, interesting. These are deep and complex problems, and if you want to add the whole tangle of climate arguments into it, go ahead. But yeah, look, there's a lot of very serious issues, but the one that I think we've really underestimated is AI. There is, I think, something about to happen that is really going to overturn absolutely everything we've ever taken for granted. But before we come to that, I just want to make a point here before we go further. A lot of people are saying it's the apocalypse. I've addressed this a few times over the years, decades I've been speaking here. I think there are very serious issues going on. I'm not sure that means it's the apocalypse, right? We're always very quick to go into that. Yes, there are issues to be dealt with, but yes, indeed, let's keep a little bit of optimism here. And I don't know where we're going to go, and we're going to see as we get to the end of this talk. Massive change is indeed on its way, but let's just keep in mind that the more you think it is the apocalypse, and of course this is a big truth or argument, the more divide and conquer comes into it, okay? So we need to be wary that we are not manipulated. But yes, certainly there are issues. But equally, there are nice things still going on. I always like to just give a mention to the crop circles. That's where, if you don't know, if you're new here today, this conference began. It was created to initially discuss crop circles, and of course, we now discuss many other things besides. But it's still going on. Here's a few from this summer. So there's been all sorts of stuff going on. It's quiet now. I said last year, if you read my article in Nexus magazine, maybe we're entering the twilight years. Doesn't mean there won't be anything, but numbers-wise, it's going to probably be down compared to what we had. And yet, as you're seeing here, we're still getting some extraordinary stuff. And actually, the formation that I loved the most so far this year, and they're still going on, was this one here. Because it just makes such a basic point. Barry Reynolds, who I'm going to mention in a minute, has said if you look at it geometrically, it's perfect. And there's so many things we could say about it. But for those that argue the whole thing is just knocked up in 5 minutes by a bloke with a pole and a bit of string, if anybody can find a centre point to that ring and any trail of any distinction and a mark in the middle, well, you're doing better than I can. And if anybody did make that, well, it's genius. And if they didn't, well then, of course, the implications still remain that strange things are afoot and beauty is welling up all around us, wherever you think it's coming from, almost in balance, in opposition to all the kind of darker stuff that's going on. Now, one of the things crop circles have done over the years is inspire people in many ways. And one of the things they've inspired often is poetry. So let's have a little bit of crop circle poetry, shall we? I love crop circle poetry. So over the years, various people have written sort of, these lovely sort of paeans to the crop circles. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter where you think they come from. What they do is they spark these very deep thoughts in people. Anyway, so I came across a crop circle poem recently, which I just thought I'd share with you. It's not the best poem in the world, but I'm just going to read this to you. It's got a few verses. Out in the fields of golden grain, mystery awaits yet again. For patterns strange have come to stay, in circles formed by night and day. No trace of footsteps can be found, no tools, no ropes upon the ground, yet intricate designs appear, as if from nowhere, very near. The wheat is flattened in a way that defies any human play, a work of art, a puzzling sight that stirs the soul with sheer delight. Some say it's aliens from space, creating shapes with cosmic grace, or nature's force, or man-made hoax, a riddle that nobody provokes. But in the end, it matters not, the origin of this curious plot. For crop circles are a sign, a wonder that we can define, a mystery that sparks our minds, a message that we seek to find, a symbol of our search for truth in fields of wheat under blue roofs. It's not too bad, is it? And if you haven't guessed already, that was written by an AI program in about 10 seconds. And I watched this happen and I was shocked. So my stepson, Will, who we met earlier, started to show me, do you know what AI can do? And I said, I'd love to know. And you hear it, but to actually witness it is different. And he said, well, let's try a few things. And then I started to play with OpenAI in particular. There are other platforms available. And asked it to write a poem about crop circles. And that literally appeared on the screen in about less than 10 seconds. Where the hell did that come from? And I've read a lot worse crop circle poetry over the years. So then I thought, okay, I'm just going to push this a little bit further. So some of you may know at Christmas, I give talks about the history of Christmas, all sides of it. And I thought, well, I often think Christmas decorations look a bit like crop formations. So let's push it. Let's ask it to write a poem about Christmas and crop circles and just see if it manages to meld them. So I won't read you the whole thing. If anybody wants it, right, email me and I'll send you the whole thing. I'll give you excerpts. And it came up with this. In fields adorned with frosty snow, beneath the stars' celestial glow, a Christmas night so calm and still, upon the land a curious thrill. As snowflakes dance in the moon's embrace, a secret art adorns the space. Is it extraterrestrial art or earthly wonders? A work of heart. What a great line. A cosmic message coded bright, a symbol of hope on Christmas night. So as the Christmas bells resound and joyous carols ring around, remember in the snow's embrace, mysteries and wonders leave their trace. Embrace the magic, let it be a part of Christmas mystery. And it moved me. I thought, well, hang on, that just came out of these circuits and this program. Jesus. I don't know about you, that shocked me. Because it actually moves me, because there's long been an argument, well, AI, it won't touch the human things that we do. What if it does? What does that mean? Where does that leave us? I'm going to go a little bit further in a minute. Briefly, AI, and you can hear this everywhere else, is going to change literally everything. A brief list for you, right? Banking, a lot of that, right, stocks and, shares trading is already done by AI, basically. Has been for years. It works at a speed way beyond what human beings could possibly do. So the world of the economy is already effectively being run by AI. Now, can I just say, I know some people call automation and AI the same thing. It isn't, but we're going to just simplify and call it AI today. Science, well, inevitably, when AI can work out things so quickly that would take us months to do, they're going to use it, aren't they? And when they get around to quantum computing, which has been said is the next revolution, where it's instantaneous, it can basically work out the answer to life, the universe, and everything in about 10 seconds, right, we're into a whole different territory. Are they going to need us? Are they going to need scientists? At some point, maybe not. Medicine, well, already it's discovering new antibiotics, it was a good thing. And I don't want you to misunderstand me here. AI will bring amazing things. But it's also where it leaves us that's the issue. Industry. Driverless cars, well, they're a bit shonky at the moment, but they'll get there. Soon it will be driverless lorries, ambulances. Why pay somebody to drive when you don't need to? And then, factories are already pretty automated. And in the end, the few people that are walking around them, why have them? Why would you pay them? When it can monitor itself, when it can regulate itself. That might not be today, but probably within the next 10, 20 years, certainly it will be. The military. I mean, the war in Ukraine, whatever you think about what's causing it, right? One of the reasons the Ukrainians have actually survived as long as they did was that they used AI and high technology in a way the Russians didn't think to. The Russians are very old-fashioned in their methods, but they've been using incredible techniques to try to find out where the tanks are. I mean, look it up. It's quite extraordinary, and that's why they've managed to survive there as long as they have. Journalism. Well, you've just seen, right? AI can write poems. AI can write very good reports. And all you do is put in the facts you want it to assimilate, and it does. And out it comes in about 10 seconds. Why would you pay a journalist to write an article anymore? I'm not saying that I wouldn't, but this will be the thinking in the economical world. And of course they won't, because at the end of the day, money is what it will be about. So yeah, journalism, I wonder how long we'll need human beings to do that. Whole books are now being written by AI. There was a lady on the radio recently saying she just came up with a story and told it to write it in a certain style, and it did. And you hear excerpts, and you wouldn't know it was written by a person. And you can fine-tune it. If there's a bit that's not quite right, of course you can edit it or tell it to edit it. So no, even the world of books, that's no longer sacrosanct. And how long before education is AI, right, driven? And I mean, there's been a lot of fuss, hasn't there, about, students doing their homework using AI, which, obviously is a concern. And now they're creating AI programs to detect the AI homework. But of course, then somebody would create another program to turn that around and so on. But then you think, right, soon we're going to be having people just educated by AI, right? Already teachers can't control the classes because there's some weird social thing going on and everyone's got ADHD and everyone's difficult. But maybe if you fed education to them by using AI, you don't need that system. And actually, then you think, hang on a minute, does it matter if they're using AI to do their homework? Because soon, they won't need to do that homework because all the skills they're learning are going to be absolutely no use to them within 20 years' time because there won't be any jobs available. And then what? So listen, we're entering strange times. And there is no question that a lot of work is very soon, and I mean it's happening already, going to be taken away from us. And that changes the whole structure of thousands of years of the way that humanity works and the economy. And we're going to address this in a minute because that could lead somewhere interesting. What I don't particularly agree with, though, in this picture is they always show robots, don't they? When they talk about AI, they show robots. So the good news is robotics is a bit behind. They can do amazing things. I wouldn't want to see that coming at me on the battlefield anytime soon, right? But they will get there. At the moment, robotics is slightly behind. It's incredible, but it's not there. One day it will be, and then we really are into the sci-fi universe. But at the moment, it's more the programs, it's more the workings out, it's that literal artificial intelligence rather than the hands-on stuff that is mattering right now. Here's a quote, and we hear similar quotes all the time now. Read this, right? Sam Altman, chairman of OpenAI, said, AI will probably most likely lead to the end of the world. But in the meantime, there'll be great companies. And that's how they're thinking. They know that in the end, we're all stuffed. But they also know there's a hell of a lot of money to be made. And they keep saying, yes, but you'll have new jobs. You have new jobs. You just work in AI and you help program it. And that's where the growth will be. For how long? Because before you know it, the AI will be able to program itself. It's not going to need us, right? And then they say, and it will bring you your freedom. You'll be free from all the burdens of work that you've had over the years. Well, that forgets, of course, that many people are defined by their work. And a lot of people will really struggle to know what to do without that work. But then, right, there's another argument that you hear. The arts. Let's have Arts Corner here, right? Hang on a minute, it's all right, though, because with all this freedom you're going to have and this free time, you can do all the artistic things that AI wouldn't want to do or couldn't do. Yes, it could. So one of the things is so that your life will be leisure. Is paint, join amateur dramatics, and you do all these fun things because nobody's going to want to replace that, are they? Well, let me introduce you, therefore, to phone technology. So some of you have been playing with this for years. If we stop to think about it, we've been heading down this road for a long time of manipulation, which basically uses AI. So you can get these silly programs on your phone that turn you into a cartoon character. You know, you take a photo of somebody, it adds funny features to them. But some of them have been getting so sophisticated of late. There's one where if you're a woman, it shows you what you look like as a man. Or if you're a man, it shows you what you look like as a woman. Or all points in between. Do you want to see what I look like as a woman? Do you want to see, right? Hey! I'm not sure I don't prefer that, actually. Never say we don't do trans issues here, right? But the point is, right, we laugh and it's a chuckle, but you also think, my God, the power of that. And of course, now we're seeing this big time with deep fake. Some of you will have seen the money expert, Martin Lewis, recently gave this kind of validation of an Elon Musk sort of financial, thing. And of course, it wasn't real. A lot of people thought it was real, that he was endorsing this. And okay, if you're really an expert on AI at the moment, you might spot it's not quite right. But of course, most people don't think like that. You go forward 10 years, you will not be able to tell the difference when somebody talking to you is AI or it's actually a real person. And I mean, that's why you've seen recently the strike in Hollywood. So, I mean, it's about other things as well, but one of the issues they've got is they've now realized you can have AI actors. So once you've scanned somebody's features or even created somebody, create an actor on the screen, right, that you can just control on a computer. Wow, hang on, you haven't got to pay actors anymore. Well, you're coming in drugged and drunk, forget all that. We could just make them do what we want, and we don't even have to pay them. This has been going on a while. Some of you may have seen the Star Wars spin-off Rogue One, where they brought back to life Peter Cushing. Now, it's not perfect, but that was made about 5 years ago. Very soon, deep fake technology will be indistinguishable. And now, we're already in that world. You will never know what's real and what isn't. UFO footage already, unless you've got 50 independent witnesses, and even then people will find a way to explain that away, you're never going to know what's real. And when a politician gives a speech and makes an incredible statement that you're not sure about, you'll be thinking, did they really say that? Or has somebody made them say that? By the way, I don't want to support the BBC here, but do watch The Capture. Go onto iPlayer and watch 2 series of The Capture, and it addresses this in quite a frighteningly convincing way, right? So there's one thing I'll say good about the BBC. So we're into very strange territory here. So image manipulation is massive. So what that leads you to think is if you can have a walking, talking person and you don't know the difference, well, soon all artwork will surely go the same way. So they're saying, well, we can all be artists and creative types. Nobody will replace that. Yes, they will. So, William showed me this program, Stable Diffusion. Others are available. So, you want to create an image, you can just do it with AI. So, we sat down and we set it a task. So, I said, right, well, just to see what we can do. Can you design a poster for the Glastonbury Symposium? Right, forget the text, but let's find an image. So, this is what I asked Will to put together. So, I wanted it to include Glastonbury Tor, a crop circle, a mystical symbol, a flying saucer, an ancient site, just some of the things that we might talk about, purely as an experiment. So he's got very good high-end gear, so it's going to be a bit quicker on his machine than it would on a slow one, but nonetheless, put it in. Within 20 seconds, it came up with the following, and there's several of these, and I asked it to produce several versions. Number one, wow, my God. That came out of a bunch of jumbled circuits in 20 seconds, and it's been creative. Now, it's not quite the Tour, is it? No, it's interesting. It's got a mind of its own. It thought, I'll do something a bit like the Tour. I never asked it to put a figure in the middle with a shadow. It came up with that, and it's brilliant. What a brilliant, I never thought about that. And I just looked at that and thought, wow, okay, this is serious. Now, I know if you're used to all this, you're going, oh, no. But most of us, I'm getting from the reaction, we don't know how far it's gone. Let me show you a few of the other ones that it came up with. Look at this one. Now, it's not quite sure what to do with crop circle because it's funny. So in this one, and it happens again in a minute, it's sort of blended a crop circle with an ancient site. It looks to me like the Bosnian pyramid in the background there. It just came up with that out of nothing. It knows certain things are going on in the world. In its programming somewhere, it's got certain, banks to draw on. But it's making these decisions itself. This one's more cartoony. That weird shape at the bottom, I think that's its attempt to come up with a mystical symbol. But it did. And I find it almost disturbing, and yet it's also highly beautiful as well. Here's a few more. Do you see the quality of this? Right, that would have taken me a year to do. If I'd have manually done that on the computer, that would take me a year, and it did it in seconds. And I've immediately thought, what's the point of me even striving to do this? And I could keep working on these. I could say, can you add a building there? Can you change that colour? You can get it to do anything you want. Here's a few more. This one looks almost a bit like our symbol by chance, which is based on the Chalice Well, by the way, if you don't know. So it's a Glastonbury symbol. And look at all these weird symbols. It's invented them itself. No one told it to make those shapes. This one's beautiful. Again, there's this weird combination of crop circle and ancient site at the bottom. It sort of blended them together. But the innovation of that, I find it completely astounding. This one looks like an old 70s book cover, doesn't it? But hey, I think the one that really got me the most, that was just so beautiful, for me was this one. And I go, again, that moves me, that picture. But that didn't come from the human soul. It just came from the machine, based on what it's worked out we like, the kind of thing that we would call art. And it's going, all right, well, I'll bung that in. And you go, and it worked. And it's still not quite the Tour, but you can see where it's coming from. You could make it the Tour, easily. Do you see where we're at? And you begin to understand why we are totally screwed, because the time is coming soon when no one's going to pay designers. Why would you pay a designer thousands of pounds sometimes for a single project? Why? Just get one programmer to come up with a few things and then they can kind of edit them from there. I know some people say, oh, that will never happen. Right, okay, well, we'll see about that, won't we? Because I have a real strong feeling it will. But it doesn't always get it right. Now, this is an experiment where you show it's still learning. So I wanted it to come up with an image, again, see if it could do people. So I said, can you do Doctor Who as played by Tom Baker? So right, there's the original Tom Baker there. Doctor Who, long-running sci-fi program. If not, look it up. But I asked it, could he wear a crown, just to manipulate the image, and I wanted him to wear robes. It's not bad, is it? Interestingly, it's done Tom Baker as he is now, with a grey hair as well. Not as he was in the 70s, which I thought was interesting. But look at the hands. The hands are wrong. AI really struggles to get hands right, and you'll often find like teeth and mouth, and it's getting there, and it doesn't quite know how to do fingers, which I find really funny. But it soon will. It is learning. It's learning with everything that it does, and then when you tell it that's wrong, it will gradually know that that's wrong, and it won't do it again. So it is an evolving being, in a way, AI, and of course that's where you start to get into the interesting areas. I asked for 2 crop circle researchers, and that's what it came up with. And again, it's not quite sure what to do with the crop circle, but you can see where it's coming from. And I look at that and blimey, that's an excellent album cover, isn't it? I'll go with that. 20 seconds, maybe less. Why did it come up with that? I don't know. And this raises some issues, though. Let me show you a crop circle we had a few years ago, showing the copyright symbol, which is interesting because, of course, there's long been arguments about who owns the copyright to crop circles. It's apparently free for all. No one's ever claimed it. I wonder when people start making money out of AI artwork, how soon it will be before the AI companies start to claim a royalty if you use their software. Surely they can't miss a trick on that one. They haven't yet, but I think a time will come where you'll have to credit them or they'll have to get a payment for each time you use something that you generated on their software. So we're going to see where that goes. But you're beginning to understand here, if you didn't already know this, right? We're in whole new territory here. And it's exponentially advancing so quickly that it's going to take us so by surprise, many of us already do not know how to cope with it. Music, you can have a whole album written by AI now. And some of it's basic, but there was an album recently with the lead singer of Oasis singing on it, and he never did. It was just an AI voice. You can't tell the difference. It's a voiceovers now. Even the BBC, some of their Wimbledon coverage on some of the kind of less important matches was done by AI. It wasn't perfect, but it will be soon. And soon, when you've got your sat-nav in the car, it won't be turn left. It'll talk to you, and it'll be saying, oh, please turn left. And you'll be going, are you sure about that? Yes, I'm very sure about it. You will. You'll be chatting to it, and you'll be having real conversations. So I think especially from the people that I've met, that I've talked to about this in our world, the so-called alternative world, we're really in danger of not seeing what's coming down the tracks here. And I've had a few really amazing conversations. More than one person said, yeah, but that won't affect us, will it? We're above all that. I think, are we? How are we above this? Right, if the world starts to use AI all the time, how is that not going to touch us? And then another phrase I've heard used, which I love. I mean, these are really nice people. And they go, yeah, but it doesn't matter because we won already, haven't we? Have we? Won against who and won what against them precisely? I love their optimism. I am an optimist. I believe that somehow the human spirit will cut through all this. But when we say we've won, does that mean we don't need to do anything anymore? We just sit down in the middle of the railway, right, and the train comes, and it'll be all right because we've already won. Really? Oh, I love the optimism, but let's be real here. Let's be real here. And the big issue that really comes out of this is who programs the programs? We heard Wendy Stacey yesterday making the point that bios of astrologers have been taken off of Wikipedia. So somebody at Wikipedia has decided we don't talk about that anymore, and we know how bad censorship is, and I've spoken many times about that here when it comes to the alternative. You question the orthodoxy now, you'll be off Facebook and YouTube quicker than you can get out this door here. Frightening. And as I mentioned yesterday, one of my old Glastonbury talks, another one, second one's come down because somebody at YouTube doesn't like what I'm saying. Well, that's the world we're entering into. So therefore, the algorithms that make these decisions, because it isn't a person at a desk anymore, right? We need to be really sure who's programming them and what they're being programmed with. Now, there have been issues with this because there have been some in America sort of far-right programming of AIs. So if you like this kind of thinking, right, you can have the far-right version where it will tell you everything the far-right believe. But there's also far-left versions. So people are trying to say we need regulation to determine what the truth is that AI should be spouting. And that's where it gets into difficulties, because as we know, what we are told is normal is just somebody else's idea of normal, like dear Mariana Spring. So Barry Reynolds came and spoke from this stage last year about crop circles very brilliantly. He's a phenomenal researcher. We're going to be hearing more about him because he's working on amazing things at the moment. He decided, what happens if I ask AI about conspiracy theories? I wonder what it would have to say. So using, again, ChatGPT is one of the big ones, he asked this question. Do you believe that some conspiracy theories are true? And I can only give you brief excerpts of this. The first thing it said was, As an AI language model, I do not believe anything in the way that humans do. My responses are based on data and algorithms, and I do not have personal opinions or beliefs. Okay, I suppose that's true. And then it adds, regarding conspiracy theories, it's important to remember that they are often based on unfounded or unsupported claims, and they can be harmful if they spread misinformation or distrust in established institutions or authorities. While some conspiracy theories may contain a grain of truth, okay, a little bit there, or be based on real events, they are usually characterized by a lack of evidence or logical reasoning. So Barry kept asking it questions. It then added, while some conspiracy theories may incorporate observational or anecdotal evidence, these types of evidence alone are generally not sufficient to support claims that are contrary to established scientific knowledge, and we all know how reliable that is, don't we? Or widely accepted facts, right? And the last bit I'll give you is that in contrast, evidence that is supported by a rigorous and evidence-based scientific process is generally considered to be more reliable and credible. This is because the scientific process is designed to minimize bias, error, and the influence of personal opinions or beliefs. That's the problem, isn't it? Because that is so subjective, isn't it? So that's what's being programmed into like the OpenAI program. So the orthodoxy is already being fixed. Now, Barry went on, and I haven't got the time today, and he got it to concede that sometimes there might be some true conspiracy theories, but mostly not. That's a computer. He's having a conversation with a computer, and these answers are coming back as quickly as you can answer it. This is the world we're now living in. And I come back to this. When transhumanism kicks in, and we've already started down that road, right, and we're getting the internet or AI or whatever it is beamed straight into our brains, who's programming that AI? Who's creating that orthodoxy? If you've read The New Heretics, and if not, I mean, obviously I recommend it, I addressed that in there. And if I wrote it today, I'd add even more in about AI. Who's choosing the orthodoxy that will be that shared knowledge through these systems that we'll all be connected to when we are part biological, when we are part robot and part AI? Because if we don't define that now and work out whose truth it is that's being enforced on us, right, we're going to be left behind very, very rapidly. But the other issue is that kind of clicks into conspiracy theories is this. You see phrases like this, very, very understated. There are concerns that mass unemployment could result from AI. No, it will do. Not tomorrow, maybe not next week. Within 20 years, yeah, you'll be lucky to have a job, to be frank. And that means, hang on a minute, hang on. If you haven't got a job, right, how is the economy going to function? Right, because the crossover to the AI economy, that can't possibly happen in 5 minutes. Doesn't this play into our dear friend's Great Reset? Right? Carl Schwab says we should all give away our things. You will own nothing and be happy. And this is the way forward. Now, maybe he spotted something we haven't, which is that he has realized, yeah, the economy just cannot keep functioning the way it is. It won't do, because it's been a work economy. You know, the human being has had value for what they could do. But when it's all being done by machines, well, what value are they? And that, of course, then leads to some very worrying things. And, of course, what many people are concerned about is we'll look this up. There's a great animated movie called Beyond the Reset. Do we all wind up just living in little boxes with a government allowance? Because that's the way it's going to go. How are people going to earn money? They already can't pay mortgages. We've seen they already can't pay their energy bills. So is that a fantastic way of driving us into this great reset where we're all living in little boxes in very restricted lives? Because actually the economy can't support anything else. But of course that also suits the control agendas very nicely. Thank you. 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's so corny to quote it, and yet not to quote it is insane. If you have never watched this film, for God's sake, watch it. Even though it was made in 1968, it is so prescient. It is so prescient. Do not watch it on your phone or a laptop. You need the biggest screen you can possibly find. It's a spectacle. But what it has to say about AI, it's become true. It's coming true right by the second today. And the worrying news is that, of course, Hal, the computer in that, he makes an error. And when he realizes he's made an error, and the astronauts are planning to shut him down because they don't feel they can rely on him anymore, he kills the astronauts but one. He tries to murder them all because he believes that jeopardizes the mission and that he still is the one that should be running the mission. And it's just chance, really, that one astronaut manages to survive. The Terminator movies perhaps go a little bit further than this. Now, there's been a bit of, again, a little bit of sensationalism. Would AI choose to wipe us all out one day with enormous nuclear explosions? Maybe, but maybe it won't need to do that. But certainly you have to understand when AI gradually is making all the decisions, at what point does it decide, looking at the state of the planet and whatnot, that actually we are the cause, right? And we're all sitting around doing bugger all, so let's get rid of this lot. Now, maybe it won't be that drastic, because it doesn't need to be that drastic. This shot was taken during COVID, right? Westminster Bridge, very, very quiet. But that could be the world of tomorrow. Because when there's no work, and when we've run out of impetus to do painting and all the creative things, because that's also being done by AI, what are we going to do? And I think a lot of people will choose to live in virtual worlds, where what they do there seems to still matter. We heard yesterday that Second Life, we can live in a VR world, is one of the most popular websites in the world. You can live out your fantasies there in whatever world you want to be in and fight for things that still feel like they matter when here they may stop mattering. The danger of that is you then got a population that in the end is going to lose the impetus to want to go forward. Why would it choose to? And maybe we wind up like the Eloi in H.G. Wells' Time Machine. That's the 1960s version. A very white future where they're all nice people, but they're utterly useless. They've lost the fire. They don't know how to deal with problems anymore. When something goes wrong, they just go, oh. And they're abused by the Morlocks, who've somehow managed to keep their kind of physical power, if nothing else. That's the danger, is that in the end, what's humanity going to do? Is it just going to zone out? Is it going to lose the will to keep going? What's really interesting at the moment is, so there's a lot of stuff about UFOs and possible disclosure, and we're going to be hearing more about that this weekend. And I think that's very fascinating. Will it be announced that we are in contact with aliens? But even if they do announce that, and it turns out to be true, there is a strange silence from the rest of the universe. It is one of the biggest mysteries. There's so few, well, there's none. There's no signals that they've ever owned up to, but even amateur astronomers, they can't seem to find anything. It's a quiet universe. Look at that. Those are galaxy clusters, by the way. Most of those blobs are galaxies. And people like Brian Cox, who, we've all got feelings about him. But to be fair to him, he said it may be, if you look at the need for certain things to give you life, right, that only one civilization per galaxy exists. But even if that's not correct, why don't we hear from them? Is it because they all get to this stage where actually mechanism takes over and suddenly, why carry on? Machines do not have the need to seek out new worlds and go boldly where no man has gone before, or whatever it may be, because it probably gets to a point and think, why? It's not serving ego, right? You'd like to think if it was programmed properly, it's just going to follow some logic. Why would it need to go and explore the universe? It might think it's too far, it's not worth it, so it doesn't bother. And this future is very unlikely ever to come to pass, because you're not going to need a man on phasers, a man on engineering, a doctor, because it'll all be AI. So even if there are spaceships going out there, this, I'm afraid, is extremely unlikely to ever happen. So is it that we're now at a stage where many civilizations have been before, where suddenly we just lose the impetus to go forward because we've given everything away to the machines? And now we come back to this image properly. We've been seeing it as a background. So if you've watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, the last surviving astronaut, David Bowman, realizes he's got to shut HAL down. He must fight the AI. And suddenly a new fire comes into his eyes. It's very subtle. He's been a very bland character up to this point. But suddenly he finds his fire. He regains his humanity. He has to fight. And he manages to get into this womb-like chamber, and he deactivates HAL. And a very moving scene, weirdly, even though it's AI that's being taken down. a lot of people don't understand what happens at the end of the film 2001: A Space Odyssey. So you're going to have to get a spoiler here, but you still need to experience it if you've never seen it. A monolith, and earlier in the film, we heard about this yesterday, one's found on the moon, but there's another huge monolith found around Jupiter. And when he approaches it, suddenly it opens up and it sucks in David Bowman down this incredible Stargate tunnel. And he's sucked like thousands, millions of light years away to somewhere. And eventually, it turns out, it's a kind of a trap. He's been sucked into this weird world where they give him this sort of hotel-like environment, and he watches himself age. And then it's like they're observing him. And what's happening is they're thinking he is the highest expression of humanity. They've managed to get to Jupiter, so they're now ready to be given their next stage of evolution. And so they send him back to Earth to be its guardian as this star child. But what a lot of people miss is, had David Bowman not managed to vanquish Hal, it wouldn't have been a human being hailed as the highest form of life. It would have been Hal. Hal would have been the one that would have gone through the tunnel, and maybe they would have said, yep, that's humankind's highest achievement. It's just lucky that it turned out to be humanity. And that's played with a bit in Steven Spielberg's artificial intelligence movie, where at the end, the little boy robot is discovered thousands of years in the future, and we've become AI. Maybe it's partly organic, maybe not. And AI is the future. We are no longer the future. So we're at a really, really interesting moment. In the Dune books, they talk back about a time thousands of years ago where they had to have the Butlerian jihad, where people had to fight the thinking machines because they realized they would not survive if they allowed the thinking machines to run things, and they have to vanquish them. And from there on, thinking machines are completely outlawed. So from the moment, right, in the early scenes of 2001, we took that bone and we turned it into a tool. That would, of course, eventually become HAL. That's where we are. From the moment we started to create tools, we were on the road to AI. Suddenly we're here. And suddenly, exponentially, it's taking off so fast, we almost can't imagine where it's going to go. So where are we going to be at the end of this? Some people are going to resist this world. Right? You might have seen Atlantis Rising. Great magazine online. Look it up. And if you look in the corner there, they now say certified AI-free content. So there's already a movement where we're saying we're not doing AI. Call centers, a lot of them are going to be AI now. A lot of them are already, and you won't know. But some are going to say, we have human beings. They'll use it as a selling point. Most sadly won't because of the economy. They'll go, I'm not paying someone to do that. But I think there will be bastions. And we've already seen the Amish people. That looks like people from the 17th century, doesn't it? But of course, this is today, where they decided they were not going to progress with the rest of humankind. They would stay where they were. And although it might look a bit silly and they still use the old traditions and the way they farm and that, maybe that's what's going to happen now. You will get certain communities that will refuse to deal with AI. And that even if you can't fight your Butlerian jihad against it, you don't have to go down that road. And it might not be as obvious as the Amish, but I think you'll get communities, cities, where they'll enjoy the benefits of new technology, but they will not allow AI to run it. Because if we don't do that, and there are not any bastions of that, what are we going to be left with? But I want to close with a little bit of optimism. So what if AI were to one day be very sort of finely programmed, that wasn't programmed with control agendas and ego? And one day this might happen where it's just truly logical and it looks at evidence. Having established what we established earlier on about the way things are run now, could it really be run a lot worse? If it was programmed properly, with real heart and real fairness, maybe it would look back at the old annals and work out, well, 9/11 was obviously a setup. Just look at the evidence. Put aside all the stupid control agendas, right? Maybe it will realise that we were all puppets of ruling elites and that that's not a way to run the world. It might actually one day see that if we allow it to be programmed fairly and it works truly logically, and maybe it will decide itself that this is not the way to go. AI is going to be massive, but it might allow us to do a bit more right brain thinking Okay, let the AI do all the left brain stuff and everything it's going to do. We've seen it can do right brain stuff as well. But beyond the artistry, what's the gift of right brain thinking? Some of you may remember Ian McGilchrist spoke from this very stage about this. The schism between left brain and right brain thinking is huge in our society. But this might enable us to say, right, leave that to the computers. We're going right brain. Here's something that I don't think computers are ever going to do. There's so much evidence that we have a collective psychic field around us. This has been spoken about many times. Call it what you will, the spirit, the soul, some say that does not exist. And yet there's something about organic life that does seem to have faculties that no computer does. When they read people's brain waves and that, and they're finding incredible things are going on, you don't seem to get that when you read computers. Computers might emulate us. We might one day be able to download some semblance of our consciousness onto a computer, but will that be us? Or have we just cloned an aspect of it? It may be that the future that we have, that we can explore, is to truly go into the next stage, explore the non-physical, the non-corporeal, explore collective consciousness, all the Rupert Sheldrake stuff. I don't believe that's going to go away. And it might be realized one day that you can have whatever wonderful machines you want, but that they will never have that gift. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've got a suspicion I'm not. And that will then be perhaps the way we go in future. And that the far future may therefore be us becoming the guardians of the world rather than the machines. But make no mistake, right, as you leave here this morning, be optimistic. Let's try and find where our place in all this is and see where we can go with this positively. But make no mistake, the world that you knew has ended. It has already ended. It's just that we haven't realized it yet. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Thank you.